Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at The Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, and I'm just here for the elder abuse.
Today we're talking about Minute 15, which begins with the Moron giving her everything and ends with an inquiry about Barton. Back on the show, we have Phillip Mottaz. Hello, Phillip.
Hello, Andy and Pete. Thank you for having me.
We wouldn't want to continue this conversation about this scene without you, because it is, we're really getting into the good stuff here. This minute, it starts with, this conversation between Natasha and Coulson. And my favorite moment from this entire conversation, where she says, I'm in the middle of an interrogation and this moron is giving me everything. And then Luchkov has that look on his face where he's, in his broken English, I not give everything. That to me is priceless.
And then her reverse reaction of like, seriously?
Yeah, right.
You really think so, buddy?
Yeah. It's like, are you kidding? So good.
She plays this really perfectly, and I think we get so many, like her, just the way she uses her face on this call, the way she guides Luchkov with her eyes, the way she nods just gently and has him do whatever she wants him to do. It's just perfect. I don't know that we call out Scarlett Johansson just enough in this movie, as because she's really very, very good at what she does, and being able to embody this character and make it feel real and lived in.
And going back to the reason why I chose these minutes, I think that was a big reason why, because I remember being so surprised. Like I really liked Tony Stark, but who didn't? I liked Captain America a lot more than I thought I would coming out of his movie. Thor, I was like, okay, sure, Thor. And the Hulk I knew about. But like I said, my introduction to Black Widow in these movies was not awesome. So she was the real surprise of like, oh, this is, and it's one of those things too. It's like, you knew who Scarlett Johansson was, but without putting any real research into this, it kind of feels like this was her becoming a movie star. You know, like she was already known, but this is like, oh, we should be making Scarlett Johansson movies.
Yeah, I mean, and she's definitely, she had been around for quite a while, but this is definitely, to your point, I mean, it's just like, same thing with Robert Downey Jr. Like, he had a full career through the 80s, and then in the 90s, he was an Oscar nominee, and then the drugs kicked in, and he kind of went down a really dark road for a long time. And so Iron Man was kind of a way to say, oh yeah, Robert Downey Jr., and he's great. And same thing here, Scarlett Johansson, it's just like, oh, I've seen her in all sorts of things. I mean, she's a girl with a pearl earring and things like that. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, and she knows how to do all of this stuff. I mean, it's kind of a thrill to kind of see these actors shaped into this new thing that they seem to click with. And to the, a point of casting with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've done an exceptional job in all of their principal characters. I can't think of a one that I feel is miscast. Like, I feel like they have such an incredible group of stars at all sorts of levels that just are doing great things and clearly having fun within this space.
A friend of mine and I would often have a debate as to who the MVP of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was. And we had to eventually, like, you could no longer say, like, the casting department. Yeah. because it was too easy.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. And even the ones that maybe they didn't get so great or, weren't working out, they somehow kind of traded up. Like, they recast Rhodey and the Incredible Hulk.
Right.
It was like I liked those actors.
Sure.
But I mean, given the choice, it was like, yeah, I'd rather Don Cheadle.
Yeah, right.
Like,
yeah.
Mark Ruffalo. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't want to. Yeah, but definitely Don Cheadle. I was starting to think, I was like, would I really take Ed Norton? No, they did such an excellent job up and down. And then in things like, I didn't know Chris Hemsworth before these movies. And now it's like, I'll never live without him. He's so fantastic. It's really well done. And to this movie's credit too, and this scene in particular, I mean, it helps that I'm literally here for only this part of it, but it does just feel like a Scarlett Johansson Black Widow showcase. Like, there's a million ways they could have done it. Most of them would have been not great. And this one is just superb. It's so great.
How do you feel her character arc has been over the course of the whole MCU? Do you feel like they treated her well over the course of it? Do you feel like there are a lot of other high points with her character?
There are other high points, although I don't know if I'd say there's much of an arc. Not that I need it necessarily for superheroes all the time, but I think this movie signifies her settling in to the character sort of the way that Thor Ragnarok is when Hemsworth settled into Thor.
Gotcha.
You know, it's like here in this movie, he's pretty good, but he's nowhere near the levels of like weird giddy delight that people have with Thor in later movies. Robert Downey Jr. seemed to settle in pretty quickly. Evans seemed to settle in pretty quickly. These guys did okay, but then this was the part where it was like, oh, got it. And so then when she shows up again in Winter Soldier, just about every scene's a delight. And in most of Age of Ultron, every scene is really fun and interesting. The only criticism I had for later movies was like, not enough of her.
Yeah.
You know, they're like Infinity War. I have whole thoughts about Infinity War, but I feel like they kind of sidelined her a bit for that. But I've always liked seeing her show up ever since these minutes.
I think that gets to part of the reason that I think I get frustrated. As much as I love to celebrate, as you say, the casting department. Like, they're not MVP because they're like lifetime Hall of Famers. Like, you can't pick them anymore because they're so good.
Right.
But like, if there was ever a character that felt like this was just Marvel running back and forth with own goals and fumbles and all the other sports metaphors you can come up with, it's Black Widow. Like, she just talk about such a. I think they started building this character at a time when there was so much skepticism about a singular woman superhero operating at a time without a man. And it's like to the point where it wasn't this movie. I think it was the next one where they wouldn't, what the controversy around not releasing a Black Widow action figure, because they didn't think the boys would like it. Like, it's just the whole culture of not being able to understand Black Widow and not understanding the appeal of Black Widow to kids, to families, to everyone. And as a result, Marvel just fumbled the ball repeatedly, like not giving us a Black Widow movie when we needed when the character needed a Black Widow movie, and having to do it in hindsight. I mean, it just didn't play. So I find that personally deeply frustrating about the character.
I agree. And bringing it back to this minute again, I realized watching this that Black Widow's fight scenes turned out to be some of the only fight scenes I ever really care about. Because a lot of times, I mean, they're mostly fun and, you see him swing around and okay, great. But it is a lot of like superpowered people versus superpowered people. And it's hard to relate.
Yeah.
But this is like a mini Jason Bourne movie for 40 seconds. And it's really fun to watch a person, sometimes Scarlett Johansson, sometimes whoever it is, doing those things and being like, I can see how a human being would do that, but I don't know many that can. And so to my frustration of later things, is, especially like in her own movie, is I think, you're right. It was just so late in the game for them to realize this. But B, I didn't need more explained about her backstory necessarily. I kind of just wanted to see her do more missions maybe. And so I didn't, a lot of that I don't quite jibe with entirely for, you can talk about it in 10 years time by the time you get to it or whenever. But I enjoy whatever version of this that I get.
Like, tell me I'm not alone. I remember so much about this movie as it surrounds the singular stunt move in this minute where she jumps backward, does that flip, and lands on the chair to break the chair into pieces.
To break it.
And then immediately after that, she does the thing where she falls on her head and springs back up. Those two moves back to back are extraordinary, like hero stunt moves. And I think it just celebrates to your point about what makes her action sequences memorable and fantastic.
And they're any chance I get to bag on the filmmaking of the later movies, they're well shot here. Like it's funny to say, or it sounds so lame, but it's like, I can clearly see what's happening. That she lands on her back, and it always makes me kind of queasy because I think she hits her head, but she just catches her head with her hands to then push herself back up to then kick the guy again. And it's like, that's awesome. It looks so good.
Yeah, Heidi Moneymaker is her stunt double. She was her stunt double in Iron Man 2 also, and I believe through the rest of the time that she's with the MCU. She's a fantastic stunt worker, and that flip, the chair flip that she does, I mean, it's crazy to see how that works, but she like flips while she's tied to a chair so that she lands on the chair on a person, shattering the chair and then taking pieces of it to beat someone else up. And then what I love so much about that next attack when she falls to the ground and then springs back up and then charges the guy, she wraps her legs around his head and then throws herself backwards to flip him over her. And the position of the camera goes vertical in that particular moment. So we actually watch it from a different angle. And it's a thrill to see how it plays. And like, I went back and rewatched that camera shot a number of times because it was just so exciting to see the construction of the scene, because it's so well put together. Like, I can't get over this action sequence. And Pete, you heard me complaining about the first action sequence, especially the car chase in the tunnel, which I'm like, okay, so she drove backwards for a little bit. It just felt kind of flat. It didn't feel very exciting.
Sure.
But then you cut to this, and for a non-superhero, suddenly, as you said, Philip, we're like in a Jason Bourne movie. We're in something totally different, and it's so exciting. This is top-notch action sequence right here. I love the way that this scene plays out.
I want to say two things about that. Number one, I'm really glad you pointed out that camera completely, like, 90-degree changed. I had never noticed it before. And I've watched this movie a bunch of times. I've never noticed it until going through it minute by minute. I'm like, the camera totally goes aside. And then it's like, it's not even a Dutch angle. It's a full tilt.
Right.
I have one other thing that I never really noticed until watching it this time, which is it is a nitpick or possibly a flaw in the fight, that at one point she headbutts somebody by flipping her head back, but she kind of just hits him with her hair.
Yeah,
which maybe she has lead-lined hair. I don't know, but it's kind of like, I don't know if that lands, but it works fine for the scene. But in watching it now in microcosm, I'm like, she kind of just, maybe she hit his eyes with her hair. That could hurt.
That'd be funny if all he does is just back up and start trying to rub his eyes. We didn't have that.
That is one of those, so many times punches and things that stunt actors do in the shot are designed to look like they contact by position of the camera. And that is one of those where it's supposed to look like because of the position of the camera, when she swings her head back, it's supposed to look like she nails him in the face. But it also looks like she's way too far from him. So it totally just looks like she's giving him a flick of the hair, and he's like, "Oh, my eyes!"
Yeah, you're right. To their credit, though, I do think it works, and I'm reminded there's some YouTuber, I think it's called Accented Cinema, and he primarily talks about Asian movies, East Asian, like Japanese and Chinese and Hong Kong action movies and stuff like that. And he has this it's a really interesting series, and it talks about. He has a couple videos on fight choreography, and a big part of it is clarity of moves, but also, and I think it's on one of the ones he talks about with Jackie Chan, where Jackie Chan is really good at selling that he has been hit. Like, even if he hasn't been, he really does it. And that's part of what makes the impact. So kudos to, I forget if it was Tall Goon or Weasley Goon, that at least he's selling it. Like, he timed it right. He might be a foot or two farther away, but he is like really falling back and reeling from whatever he has been struck with, whether it's hair or the back of her skull.
Right. Though, yeah, it's such a fun sequence. And then to punctuate it in such a fun way with a cutaway to Phil as he's on his phone, just listening to it. Like
listening to elevator music,
yeah.
Except it's the most exciting fight ever.
Right. You know, you get that sort of comedy in the Marvel superhero films. Like, this is what I think DC never quite caught on to, is the idea that people love having some laughs when they're watching these things, because it plays in such a funny way, like a little moment like that. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. I love seeing Phil as we cut to him, as he's just kind of standing there patiently on hold, waiting, for her to finish.
And that's, I love it too. And I also love realizing here that her last line before she starts fighting these guys is, "Let me put you on hold," which is like this low key, awesome, badass line, you know, to be like,
yeah,
that's the subtext is, I'm going to go kick the crap out of these guys, but let me put you on hold. And then he is on hold.
And it won't take very long, right? Like, it's such a power move. Like, let me put you on hold. There are 3 giant guys here, and this won't take very long.
You know, don't worry.
It plays so well. And then, of course, she ties up Luchkov, tosses him off the giant hole that they have in whatever reason for this floor. And she grabs her high heels and walks off. And then it comes back to, where's Barton now, as she picks up the phone. And this whole thing is the reason that she shifts her view on all this is because of this connection to Barton. When Agent Coulson says Barton's been compromised, that is her cue that, oh, there's more afoot here. And so it's an interesting trigger. And obviously, that's going to give us a sense of this relationship between her and Barton that really lasts all the way through to Endgame and beyond. And I like the way that we get this sense of importance here. I think that it plays well.
I don't have a constructive criticism for this, but I do have a question, which is going to come out snarky. But is Hawkeye the first character, like side character, that we only care about because a more charismatic character cares about them, that we've seen? Like, the prototype of this is going to be when Bucky comes back as Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Because I am always of the mind, and I feel I'm in the minority here, but I'm totally the mind of, like, we only care about this guy because Captain America does.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that happens in that one movie, but then this guy keeps showing up with his machine gun. And I'm like, great.
It's him again. Right.
And so, speaking of, like, the arc of either, you know, success or settling into things, I kind of think my feeling with Hawkeye, I wasn't totally on board with him until Age of Ultron.
Well, I think that's a great comment, because, you know, unless you were a fan of Hawkeye from the comics, you know, you probably didn't have a whole sense as to who this character was. And so far in this franchise, we've seen him once briefly in Thor, when he is, you know, he shows up to possibly take out Thor when Thor is threatening the hamster. The hamster tunnels, as I like to call them. And
yeah.
And then that's it. And then he stands down. That's all we get of him there. And then he starts this film as immediately being taken over by Loki and becomes one of the bad guys. So, to your point, and I mean, you know, Jeremy Renner has effectively said as much, that, you know, he wasn't thrilled with how the character was treated. And I think that's certainly fair, because it's hard to care about him up to this point in this franchise.
Yeah. Yeah. And you hit it on the head. I mean, this is obviously a bazillion-dollar problem, because this movie didn't need help, but that did always feel like just there was, like, maybe some other way to just give us an introduction of who Clint is before he gets turned. Because all we really know is he hangs out up high and stares at stuff. Like, that's all it is. And if it just had been, like, a little more there, I think that would have put this, like I say, not made this movie more successful, but maybe helped his character just a bit more.
I think the thing with Hawkeye is it's a Jeremy Renner thing. that I feel like I have an actor crush on Jeremy Renner. And so it doesn't kind of matter what he did as Hawkeye in this movie, because I totally see your point. Like, why do we necessarily care about him? He comes in and he's just doing his thing, and then he's mind controlled, and that's how he is for most of the movie. And we don't really get any redemptive arc all the way until Ultron, when he's in the little hut with what's her name? The Scarlet Witch, saying, "Look, I'm a dude with bows and arrows. Nobody knows why we're here." Right? That whole sequence, which was awesome. That's the line that turns Jeremy Renner into full-on Hawkeye. I like him here because he has credibility from other stuff outside of the Avengers, and I think that may be like he's able to ride on those particular coattails for a very long time.
Speaking to the casting again, absolutely.
I was going to say the same thing, Andy.
Yeah.
That, like, you have what I had to go off of was the Hurt Locker. I'm like, well, if it's that guy, I guess it's all right.
There you go.
It's like, I mean, I can.
Yeah, I'll give him more time than some other unknown, right?
Yeah. What perhaps would have helped, and again, we've kind of played some rewrite games with that opening, as far as Loki's voyage to Earth and all that sort of stuff. But perhaps also that whole opening could have been helped if Hawkeye was working with Fury and Hill and Coulson, trying to stop Loki as Loki was escaping with the Tesseract, and then just as they're kind of escaping. And Hawkeye stops him, and he could actually have used his arrows even in that opening sequence, for Pete's sake. And then suddenly, right at the end, as he stops Loki and gets the Tesseract, that's when Loki touches him with the scepter, takes him over, and then the two of them flee. But then we would have actually had some of him in that opening.
There might be some downside to it, but I really can't think of one. That would have been it. Because, you have literally one of the Avengers there. I know you haven't said it yet, but he's right there. So you should probably use him. It makes sense in the scheme of things that Loki, like, if you were planning this out, you would want to take out the strongest person first, but he doesn't know that. Why would he know that?
Yeah, all he says is, "You have heart," and so he takes him. But it's like, how does he know? Why is he the one that he has heart? There was this other agent that got up 3 times and kept fighting. Like, that guy had more heart than Hawkeye showed. So, but whatever.
Yeah, there's a little cut scene of a guy going, "Hey!"
Yeah, well, what about me?
And it's taken a few minutes for me to understand this other problem that I have with the way Hawkeye is handled. But let's not forget that we're entering the building the team portion of this movie. Hawkeye is never built into the team. He's never officially recruited. He's just there. His brain is taken over. He gets hit on the head real hard, and then he's presumptively an Avenger. Like, does anybody want him there? Does anybody Cap?
Pete,
does they really care that he's there? So,
Pete, you're forgetting he's already level 7.
Well played.
All right. Well, that's where this minute ends. So we'll finish out this sequence and start our next one on Monday with minute 16. And Philip will be joining us again. So we'll get one more chance to chat with Philip. So, Philip, once again, tell everybody about your books and where they can track them down.
Yeah, my mystery novels, the Psychic Barber Mysteries, are available everywhere. They're about a woman who cuts hair by day, but has secret psychic abilities that she normally uses in her job to touch the back of people's heads and see the perfect hairstyles they want, but occasionally touches the heads of some people and sees crimes or murdered bodies, and she's compelled to solve them. So please look those up.
So good.
You can find my website, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff.
Did you ever see the old TV show Amazing Stories?
Yes.
Has anyone brought up to you the Amazing Fallsworth episode with Gregory Hines in it? So he is a magician, and he's performing, but he actually has psychic powers, and he touches people, and then he can, it's magician tricks, but because he has psychic powers, it makes it very easy for him. But in context of the show, he actually touches somebody who had just strangled somebody, and so then suddenly now this person is aware of who he is, and he knows who they are, and it's a whole thing. It's a very fun episode. But
I'll have to check it out, but only because you mentioned it. I've been asked, like, how did you think of this story idea? And it honestly happened while I was getting my haircut. And I just didn't feel like talking. And I thought it would be great if this person could just download my images, just say what it is. And then I thought, if they were psychic, I hope I'm not thinking of something embarrassing or gross or weird. And then I thought, if this person was psychic, what if they touched the head of a murderer? And so I'll definitely check that out. That's awesome. Interesting.
Funny. Well, check out the links in the show notes, everybody. We'll have them there. And we'll be back on Monday, like I said, to talk about minute 16. So, Pete, thanks as always.
Maybe she's coming to my house, Andy.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.